funny because only Zach's head is above what everybody can see right now. Yeah, we're live. We're streaming. Let's
Excellent.
let's go for it. Hello, everybody. My name is Skeeter Green. My faithful companion, Zach Glazer,
I'm
is,
Zach
is
Glazer,
is
and
off to the corner.
we're here for the small publishers stream. We're here to actually answer questions about as much as we. Oh my God, I can finally see what you set up, Skeeter. That's really funny. Um, anyway, no, we're here to answer questions about small publishing because we've all done a lot of it, and we want to share with people so you don't have to suffer like we did. And so,
Well, to be honest, some suffering is good.
I think we're going to go on the chart here on the British Square to go down here to Mr. Greg Gillespie.
Mr. Greg Gillespie, please introduce yourself and tell us one embarrassing thing about yourself.
Um, as introduced, my name is Greg Gillespie, and by night I'm a D&D geek, and by day pretty much the same thing. My embarrassing thing is that I like crooner Christmas music.
Ooh,
That's
savage.
not that embarrassing.
Yes,
That's
it
Canadian.
is. That's true.
And that's not embarrassing at all. That's just polite.
That's true.
Okay. And that's not embarrassing at all. That's just polite. Next.
Levi Combs.
Hi, I'm Levi Combs. I own and operate Planet X Games. One embarrassing thing, I can eat a 92-ounce steak by myself.
That's it. Why are you embarrassed about that? You should be proud of that.
Yeah, that makes you an apex predator.
Yeah, I was going to say, the alpha. All right, we figured that one out quick.
Jeffrey Talanian.
Okay, I'm Jeff Talanian. Pleasure to see you guys. Thanks for having me. So I am the creator of Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. So let's see, my one embarrassing thing. Well, I don't know, like I suppose it would be embarrassing for some, but some may claim it to be a badge of courage. I like to drink Moxie often.
Oh God,
that is
Nectar of the gods.
that is the worst.
There's a big lag that just happened there on my end.
Oh,
It's okay. He said he drank Moxie, which is really embarrassing anyway. So,
Jason
Better
Gardner.
than White Claw.
I'm Rocky. I'm one half of Silver Blue Light Publishing.
And
one
you pronounced it right.
I mean, I should know how to pronounce my own company name, right?
Well, considering
One
we're
embarrassing
following
thing about
Tim.
me is I haven't had a TPK in at least 2 years.
Aw. Go get him, little guy.
I'm trying. They keep outsmarting me.
You're
Ian
coddling them.
McGarty.
I'm Ian. I'm the other half of Silver Belay Publishing. I don't know, embarrassing. I once
For you, this
spent
might be
an
tough.
yeah, I know, right? Nothing embarrasses me.
Right.
I spent an afternoon in Mike Battlato's bed with Nick Cage and Skeeter Green. Some might consider that embarrassing. I consider it a great afternoon.
I
Yes.
have pictures, and it's a sad part. And
Yeah,
it's actually
no,
ultra.
it was
Hot in here.
perfectly fine. All right, to dive in, just to give everybody a little bit of background, this is a small publishing seminar that Rocky and Ian and Jim Wampler with Mud Puppy Games and I were all doing Kickstarters at about the same time last year, and we all decided to kind of compare notes and figure out what things were working for us and what things we were getting held up on. And we kind of pooled our notes, and I started talking to some other people about it, and they thought that was a really great idea. They were kind of shocked at first that we weren't being all cutthroat, like, oh, they're your competition. They're, you guys are breaking up the customer base, and it's like, no, we're not.
Mm-mm.
I mean, at our level, it's not like, Watsy and Paizo duking it out for the consumer shekels or anything. So we kind of decided to pool our collective wisdom. Zach and Jeff did it before us, and Jeff has actually turned it into a full-time gig. Greg is a freaking professor, and Levi is like just a step above a hobo. I mean,
Yeah, none of those things.
we have all different levels of experience in this, and things that we're good at, things that we're not good at. I'm still trying to find the things that I'm good at. Found a lot of things I'm not good at. But this has been a way. I did this seminar with some of these guys at North Texas 2 years ago, and I've kind of just taken it on the road to give people some hints and mostly let everybody know that you can ask people in the industry questions. You don't know what you don't know until you're stuck, and you need to know you can ask people.
Yeah, never do what most of us did, which was not ask and try to figure it out and flail about. And I could tell the story later about how much flailing I did, but we are all, I know, happy. We're not going to be your guide. We're not going to sit there and teach you how to use InDesign, but we can give you hints on how to learn it faster. We can tell you how not to set up your stuff for sale. We can tell you things to avoid in Kickstarters. If you have a question, like I often will evaluate Kickstarter pages from new publishers when they ask me to, because, you know, it's just the right thing to do, because in an industry like ours, I'm one of the very few people that I do this full time, right? I got lucky. I got noticed by Frog God and I worked there. I wouldn't be doing any of this without the kind of fans we have. And most of the small publishers are also they're also your customers, and they're also your fans, and they're also everything else. And so the more we spread it around, it's like it's a hackneyed, but rising tides does lift all boats. And I hope everybody wants to ask any of us, and I'm certainly me or anybody else, because I ask these guys questions all the time. I do.
Right. I was just going to point that out. I think that doesn't actually end when you get to the point where you're small publishing yourself, because we're still networking with each other. I think like only 2 weeks ago, I just peppered Zach with about 18 questions about something just to pick his brain on something. So it's we're still learning ourselves,
It's like being in a network that we want you to join, is basically what we're saying for these kind of seminars. Is we want people to be, they want you to feel comfortable enough to ask me, or to ask, I don't say Skeeter necessarily, but Rocky for sure I know is a nice guy.
We're the RPG Amway.
Greg Gillespie's the nicest person here, because he's Canadian. No, but in all honesty, join and be a part of the network that we all have, and ask questions here. If you have questions, if you have really significant questions that require follow-ups, I know you can ask me. But as we go around, we'll talk about more of our experiences. But who's next?
Yeah, let's just go around the horn. Gillespie, what's something that you would like to give to the populace about your experience with Barrow Maze and all the stuff you've done?
Probably the main sort of meta point I would make is that if you're thinking about writing an adventure or creating something from scratch, it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming at first, but just remember that someone told me the adage a long time ago: the only way to eat a whale is one bite at a time. And just divide it into sections, look at those sections for how many paragraphs will be in each section, then focus paragraph by paragraph, and then put one good day behind or in front of another good day, and just keep focusing on that, thinking small bites, and then it'll come together. And I've tried to keep that in mind as I've gone through, because sometimes you can get disappointed, or you don't think you're writing your best, or you don't think an idea is very good. But if you just keep at it and persevere, the tide will turn, and before you know it, you'll have something done.
Nice. Levi.
Don't eat too much whale, though. You might cause you to blubber.
Yes.
Yes. Same question.
So
pay attention, man. We're on a show, for Christ's sake.
I think probably the best piece of advice is, if you have something you want to write, if there's something that you want to do, stop fiddling around and just write it.
Yeah.
The first draft you get, it's not going to be good. You're going to have to whittle it down and get it to where you want it to be. But that's what networks like this exist for. If I write something and I'm really unsure on this plot point, or I just don't know about this, I can send it over to Skeeter and say, hey man, can you take a look at this and maybe give me ideas. And as far as, we pass things around to each other, and, we get different looks on different things. So that's what, a group like this exists for. But the most important thing, again, is just taking that first step out the door, man, and just write the damn thing.
Yep.
I think it's never gonna really like match what your perfect view is too in your head.
Yeah.
Like it's never, we get 80% there and it feels amazing, but
that
like
last 20% is
tough.
I'm gonna
that last
I'm
some of that last 20% is budget too, right? Is how
Right.
much, or do you want to lose money or break even and or make money, hopefully. And I think that's an important thing to consider, is like, you might have to make cuts with art, and it might be not the perfect thing, but it's still something beautiful that you put together.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that point, because that's a fork in the road that almost every project comes to, and it's a major point that I want to get to later. But stop it, Zach. I know you're getting ready to say
I
something.
just want to build on his point. I'm just saying, and 10% or 20% will be way better than you ever expect of your own projects.
Jeff.
So I think I'd like to riff on something I mentioned earlier on Facebook today.
Nope,
And,
Jason.
No,
I'm kidding. Go ahead, Jeff.
So we had sort of reached a milestone. We'd reached 2,500 followers on our Facebook page for Hyperborea, which I thought was really cool, because, started the page with, a very small publishing company of the small print run of games. And, you start a Facebook page and you look at it and you're like, okay, is anyone going to follow it now? And so now, years later, we got 2,500 followers. So, and what I was mentioning on that post was that when I started my game, it was basically creating something that I wanted to play with my beer drinking buddies. So it came from the heart. It was natural. I was not like someone scheming behind my computer screen, trying to figure out how I'm going to make a buck in the role-playing game industry. It was something that came natural to me. It was sort of a niche that I wanted to explore because I enjoyed it. So
you can make a buck by starting with 5.
right. So basically, I guess what my point is if it's something that you're passionate about and what you want to do, then other people like of mind will flock to it as well, because as it turns out, there's a lot of people who will share your same, design beliefs or philosophies on what they enjoy playing as well.
Authenticity is a big thing.
Yeah, authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about that a little bit the last time I was on with you guys.
That's another one of my little tentpole points, but we'll get to that later. Rocky.
Sure.
My turn?
Your turn.
2 things. Don't be afraid to publish it. RPG Now, Drive-Thru RPG, makes it super simple to publish things today. If you've got Word, you can do it. And number 2, playtest. Playtest. Make sure that your encounters are balanced.
Yeah, there were a number of things I had to change because I handed it to guys in this group for Crypt, and it made it so much better because I just asked for help.
Well, I'm playing an Ian's game over the internet, and we just play tested some of his puzzles in the last dungeon we were in, and I was pointing out, like, all right, so what happens here? Like, this is an alternate solution that you may not have considered, and those are the types of things that show up when you're playtesting.
Right.
People can see. You can see how other people think, and maybe implement a solution that you didn't see before.
Yeah, that's totally Ian.
And that's this guy behind me too. Is like, so that was like right when this quarantine nonsense started. I had been playtesting like the final boss fight that we've been writing for the thing that we should have had on Kickstarter now, but we've kind of hit pause on with everything going on. But I played it like 6 times or 7 times in a week. And I'd already played it half a dozen times before that until I finally got it to what I wanted it to be, and got Rocky to look at it. And then Rocky still was like, all right, let's make these tweaks to make it better. So it's that sort of thing. Like, you're never going to have that knife as honed and sharp as you quite want it to. But the more you play it, the more you do it, the better it's going to be. I think for sure you can tell when adventures haven't been play tested and they've been sold.
Yeah.
When it's someone just like typing it out and tossing it out, it's pretty clear that they've never tried it. And I think that's one of the biggest things that can make you a decent publisher, I think, is play testing. Like I know like Jeff play tests the hell out of some of his stuff too. And it shows when you roll into the adventure.
Yeah.
As a DM, all the stuff I want is going to be there.
Oh, absolutely.
Player handouts are going to be labeled correctly. And
they're going to do things that you never would have anticipated, or ask questions that you never would have anticipated. And so, of course, you know, we're talking about tabletop gaming here, right? So it's not like our video game counterparts that have defined parameters, right? It's so open-ended. So we can only do so much. We can try to, you know, we could try to cover all the bases, but you're never going to cover all the bases.
Right.
But sometimes there are some major holes that you realize, or flaws in design, because you get so close to it. There could be some flaws in the design that you sort of overlooked because you were, you know, thinking about something else. So yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Ian.
Yeah, the playtesting definitely gives adventures more depth and flavor. I mean, you can feel like it's not just a two-dimensional, oh, like Ian was saying, you know, somebody cranked this out on their Word file in 2 days and published it. You know, somebody put some thought into it.
Well, it also keeps you from looking like I almost swore, but I did not, because this is a KoboldCon, and KoboldCon is a good place.
Were you going to say douchebag?
Exactly what I was going to say. How'd you know?
Is that a swear?
No, but in all honesty, you can inadvertently write things, and we know people who have that you don't mean how they get interpreted at all. And when you're going through and doing that in playtesting or extra editing, you save everybody a whole lot of problems that we've seen. That's a big deal. Skeeter, make sure when we get to answer questions, Lloyd has a great one about reviews.
Yeah, I saw that as well. So one of the things that I want to talk about when I started the seminar initially, I told everybody, no matter what you're doing, whether you're writing, whether you're creating a piece of art, music, whatever you're doing in a creative sense, at some point along the path, there's going to be a fork in the road where you have to decide if this product and project is a piece of art or if it's designed to make you money. And there are different choices that you have to make because of those forks.
There's overlap, but it's not, you can't go the whole way doing both unless you happen to be.
Yeah, I agree with what Zach said.
You shush. We're going to go this direction. And Ian is going to talk about this because he actually mentioned it a little bit earlier when you were talking about, you know, like the 20%.
So, and I think like this is probably the same conversation I always talk to Jeff about when like Jeff and I talk about budgets a lot, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm always, cause I think that for me, that's over and over my head. Cause you could I could easily spend thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars just on awesome art, like just on art. And I felt like I do most of our maps now because of money, right? Because
it wasn't a great job at it too.
You did my map.
But that's because I was like, shit, we can't afford to make it look how we want. How are we going to do this?
That's why I learned InDesign.
Yeah. And I think it's that. It's either you get yourself the skill to get it closer to that art you want it to be, or you pony up a lot of cash for it. And that's a thin line.
Yeah.
But it's easy to blur over. And I think the one thing that Jeff really sort of taught me was that, like, keep that budget in mind going in. Like, know what costs you're going to get into going in, and know when you're passing it. And if you're going to pass it willfully.
I'd like to back up a little bit further for a second. Our first printed book was Silvery Moon Tavern, and there were a lot of mistakes in that book. I talked earlier about publish it, no matter, like, get it out there somehow. You're gonna make mistakes, and some of them are going to be in your budget, but you've got to learn from them. In order to learn from them, you've got to do it. You've got to keep pushing forward, making the mistakes and trying different things in a budget, in the process, all the way through.
Yeah, I think that's a fine point, because it's like, if you continue to work on it over and over and over and continue to work on circles because you're perfecting your so-called art, then you're never going to get it out there.
It's
At
never
some
gonna be
point,
done.
you have to cut the cord.
They stuck way off in the far west.
To
Levi?
that, I want to add one small thing is that there are so many times, and Lloyd's in the audience, and Lloyd remembers we're working on Whispering Venom. There are so many times, and especially with Edwin Nagy when I worked in Death and Taxes, we would argue about things that seemed so important that I can't remember the argument now. And I still love the book, and I lost 30 arguments with Edwin and won 2 or whatever it was. But in the end, everything that got changed in there, I no longer feel as important as I did when I was so deep in the words that when you step back, you're much better off having released it, have people look at it, making compromises, and let it out. Because you learn from it and you go to the next one. Because you're more likely to abandon a project you've overworked than you are a project you haven't, that you're just still
That's
excited
quite
about.
right.
Yeah, don't die on every hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can work a certain encounter area to death because you're really trying to perfect it and you're really trying to establish that mood and you're really into this monster or NPC or whatever. And then later on in the manuscript, as things develop and you're, 20 or 25 pages ahead of that, as everything else starts to fall in place, you realize that encounter no longer fits the grand scheme of what you were doing, and you need to kill that darling.
Yeah, no, it's
It
hard.
happens.
Ed Greenwood talked about doing a play test with salamanders in the Queen of the Demon Web pits, where Brian Bloom loved the room so much, and then all the players went in and just walked out. So that happens, and if you don't realize that, it does affect your adventure. And if you're so married to one encounter, it makes it hard. So
Yeah.
Well, I think the play test goes along with the editing, which actual text editing, which I think Greg is probably like A1 in my book. Like his books are edited like, I mean, both of them, Jeff and Greg, like you don't find very, very many misspelled words or punctuation errors or anything funky that's going to throw you off the rhythm of reading their stuff. And I think that's really important. And you can't do it alone.
and you can't edit your own stuff. Period.
No.
Levi,
It never works.
what do you have to add to this? And then we'll get up to Greg. We'll
No,
close this subject out with Greg.
Just what Jeff was saying about killing your darlings, that's very, very important. Because sometimes you like, and again, as Zach was saying, you can get so zeroed in on this stuff. You're so into a series of encounters or an NPC, or maybe you have a magic item that is you just got to have in there. But then when you start play testing things and things are rolling over, it just doesn't work. I had something like that for Howling Crater. I had this great magic item. It was going to be in one of the final encounters. Wonderful. But when I played it, when I got down and started play testing it, and it just thematically and in play, it did not work at all. Everybody was confused as to what was going on. It was terrible. So as much as I enjoyed it and I could see it in my head, it just didn't translate to the paper or to the page very well. So
That can happen. I was recently running a module. It's not, sorry to interrupt. I'll let you continue.
No.
I was recently running a module by one of our peers, and in the module there was a puzzle, and I had read it at home, probably sitting on the toilet or something, and I kind of thought that I got it, and I thought, when game time comes, I'll figure this out. I'll have this going. And then when I had my group in front of me of my 7 players or 8 players that night, and I was looking at the puzzle, I had to just make up something else totally on the spot because I just could not comprehend what I was reading or trying to get through.
Yeah.
It was just too complicated. And that
And I
happens.
feel-
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
no.
No.
I feel that goes back to editing too. Like, if the puzzle was too complicated, were they describing it? Were they using descriptions that are too complicated, or was the puzzle just mechanically too complicated? And that's something that editors and playtesters should be able to find for you.
Or maybe I was just being a dullard.
Greg?
I know dollars, dude. You know where I work, so no, you're all right.
I'd probably just to the writing, the play testing, the editing. I think one of the things to keep in mind, just to put it all in perspective, is that these kind of projects are never really finished. They're only ever abandoned, and because you can polish and play test and edit and continue writing past the point of return. So you take these projects, you push them as far as you can for as long as you can, and you hope that your process was good enough that by the time it sees the light of day, you're not going to have your hopes crushed by somebody writing a mean review or something like that. But at the end of the day, if you're true to the vision you have in your mind for the project, and the writing reflects that, and the editing reflects that, and the art reflects it, then it will be authentic, as it was mentioned earlier, and it should find a home.
You actually brought up,
and I'm so sorry. Let me just jump in here real quick.
Jump.
People can smell when something is not authentic. When it's not, it doesn't come from what it doesn't come from the heart or
Smells like sauerkraut.
Like when Jeff was saying about how if somebody, you can tell when somebody's just making something for money. But if it's authentic, people will get behind it. That's a big plus. I mean, that's the only way that some of us can even get our dip our toe into the pool, is by doing the weird things that mean something to us. So
yeah, we've all kind of come from a very garage band sort of method of starting to do these books. So, but I wanted to touch on something that Greg mentioned because it was a question in the chat about reviews. Do you guys read reviews of the products? We'll start with Zach.
Okay. Yeah, it was really hard. The first one I did, Whisper and Venom, it was easy because I got way overpraised. But as we did more, it got a little bit harder. And then Jeff's hero, Bryce from 10 Foot Pole, savaged one of mine, and it was just awful.
I got one of those too. And fuck
His
that
last
guy.
Our last from him was pretty good. I was really shocked.
I'll be honest with you, but it's something I had to do because not everybody likes it. We all know rationally, not everybody's gonna like everything you do, but it hurts, man. You spend thousands of hours thinking about it. I mean, you may take 100 hours to put one together, but it's 1,000 hours of thinking, and especially your first one. I thought about Whisper and Venom 3 years before I actually started really working on it and hired Lloyd. And I thought and wrote longhand and all this stuff. And then when the first person reads it, that is a reviewer, not an actual editor, which was different kind of hard. It was wonderful, the good one. And the first dismissive one, you're like, you don't even own it. And they didn't. That will happen to you. And the thing is, you have to, developing a thicker skin for that makes you better in the end, because then you're able to concentrate, because you only have so many hours as a small publisher guy. And those hours are really, really important because you can't delegate anything. Don't use them to dwell. And so therefore I would, what they call the hair of the dog of the Romans. Read everything that you can that's horrible about you early so you can survive it later. So that's my advice.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I want to see that negative criticism, as much of it as I can. I want to learn from it. I want to. I want to know that they thought that the spacing between my lines was too much or too little. I want to know that I got too wordy here. I used words that aren't common parlance, right? Like, I want to know those things so I can be better. I read every review I can, just hoping to learn something new to become just a little bit better all the time.
And I think that, so a lot of the way that all of us sell is with social media, right? So and we all work together to do it. We all push out each other's stuff because we're excited. Like, I'm excited to see the next astonishing adventure that comes out. I'm excited to see, High FL when that comes out. And I want other people to see that too. But yeah, it's Skullcado, which is this really sweet video too. I loved it.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But I think, like, even a negative review is going to drive you publicity, is going to drive you sales. Like, and I think that's where you can't be too thin-skinned about it. Is that it's more eyes looking at your product, and at the end of the day, each individual person is going to decide for themselves whether they like it.
And I'm going to add one small thing to that. As a negative reviews, like on drive-through, do one other thing for you is if you're not technically proficient in creating PDFs yet, or that's something you're learning, you will learn that. And that's a technical thing. That's not my game design skills are terrible. It's, my Acrobat skills suck. Well, guess what? That hurts less. that hurts a lot less than to say, you stink at Adobe Acrobat DC, Zach. I'm like, oh, but I can learn, and you can upload it and no one ever know again.
You
That
left
is one other review.
too much white space because you couldn't learn how to shrink that text box. You're like, oh, it can shrink that text box.
You learn those things, but the technical ones you can fix from the review and make it better for everybody, and then no one ever knows. So that's a secret. All right, Skeeter.
Oh,
Come on, get back to it, Skeeter. Come on.
anybody? No, does anybody else? Jeff, what about reviews? How did you like that when Bryce said that?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't.
I mean, I've heard
don't
this
give-
story. You don't have to.
I
go
don't
into
give it
but-
much weight when somebody like that, gives what he calls a so-called review. I think
Yeah.
I think part of the thing that we're dealing with today is that anybody and everybody is a reviewer. When we go back to the pre-social media days, 70s, 80s, 90s, reviews were by, people who were professionally working for a magazine or a newspaper, right? Now we base our purchases on Amazon. We click down to see how many stars does this item have? And then you start to look at the reviews, and some of them are just downright comical, positive and negative alike. And so while I appreciate that someone would spend the time to type up a review, whether it be positive or negative, I really try not to give it that much weight personally. Yeah, I do agree with Rocky in the sense that sometimes you can learn things, and and like you said, are you given 2 spaces after your periods and all your period? That's an outdated type of style. Like, why are you doing that? Like, no, that's a good point. It's not really done anymore. Stuff like that. I guess that kind of stuff is kind of neat to learn. But I've sort of fallen into this sort of trap in the last few years where, so my game has gotten a little bit more attention, and because of that, I have a lot of so-called reviewers. Hey, I have a blog, or hey, I do a podcast, and they want your catalog of stuff for free. And it's, it gets to the point where I've felt as though, it's just fellow gamers who are just looking to get some, to
Yeah, I'm
stock
still
up their
waiting for all
shelves.
my stuff, man. You're on
Right.
our show right now. What's the deal?
I
Right?
buy your
So
stuff.
I owe
I'm a
you.
sucker.
I picked all your stuff up from Jeff like a couple weeks ago too, so I'm sure you'll get it soon.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Perfect.
But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that I do appreciate that people would spend the time to review, but I try not to give it too much weight or let it bother me, because like Zach had pointed out, if you read one negative one, if you spend your day spiraling down into this sort of negative energy morass that you're stuck in because you feel that they're wrong, and you feel like that either you or one of your friends should prove that they're wrong and go after them, then you're losing a day. You lose, or more than a day sometimes, of being a creative, productive person.
The professionalism armor that you grow from that is what really grows you from being a hobbyist to a small publisher, and as a one that's successfully producing more than one book. I mean, it's one thing to produce a book. Like Whispering Venom, my goal was to produce one and never come back. Well, here I am. But I'm only able to do that because I was able to grow from the stuff that can, like Jeff says, you get to the point where you don't see it as much anymore, but you take it for when it's worth useful for. But
Zach, are there any questions? We're at the 30-minute mark. Are there any questions we need to address before we get off the weeds on another subject?
yeah, there's 2 actually. There's one. The first one I want to address is from Barbarian Luke, and it's for Levi, who apparently has the coolest beard here. And so, sorry.
I don't know about that.
And other guys who are actually publishing modules, but I think that's actually all of us.
Yeah.
How do you determine what adventure idea module to pursue? Clearly, there's a trunk full of ideas, but how do you balance your art, the market, and the time you have for prioritizing projects? We'll start with Levi, but we all have something to say on that.
I'm a planner. I like to. I have plans out for 3-4 years, and just kind of an idea of where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do 3 or 4 years out. Now, having made a plan, it doesn't always go the way that I want it to. Like with the latest pandemic COVID stuff, it just hasn't gone. I wanted to launch last month. I'm going to have to launch later. It doesn't go the way you want it to all the time, but I think it helps to have a plan and to know where you're going and your general idea of how you're going to get there. You can kind of, lace your stuff with ideas that helps tie everything together. You can, push stuff out early, give early hints and glimpses, art previews, all that sort of stuff. And it helps build a bigger narrative for your world. Now, I primarily just do adventure modules. I don't have a setting like Jeff or a lot of the other guys. So, I'm just doing standalone adventures usually. But and that's easier, I think, than having try to put something in something like in the Lost Lands or trying to string everything together in Hyperborea. So that's easier for me, but at the same time, trying to push that out and having that plan of 3 to 4 years in advance, that really helps me.
I have something to add. my job on Frog God is now pretty much I'm the guy who says yes, no, you go here, this is a sign here. I'm the resource allocation person, and I'll tell you right now, it is no different than being me as lesser known as one guy allocating the resources, and now I do it for 50 people. However, I still have more resources to work with. It doesn't get any easier having a ton of stuff. You still have to weigh a lot about what projects fit, what fits what you're doing, what fits what you're at. Levi says, yeah, Frog Out Games, adventure's worth winning because adventures are easier. But we do it the same way. And it comes down to what are we good at? What are we passionate about? A lot of the projects I totally green light without even questioning this stuff. Tom Knaus, one of our writers, he says, I have an idea. I'm gonna let him do it because everything he's turned into me is good. Levi, if he would do it again, though he's too busy doing his own crap. Hag's job was awesome. He would get a pass to do one again for us if he wanted to spend the time to write it and not do it himself. And there's reasons why he does it himself, and I get it. That's why I don't hate him. I just kind of loathe him. But no, but seriously, it's no different. And so do what you're passionate about first, things you think you love, because you're going to do a better job. That's all there is to it. That's how you pick it. So go ahead, next.
Greg?
Can you remind me the question?
No, actually, no problem. No problem.
Sorry, Luke.
It comes down to how do you determine what adventures, ideas, or module to pursue? Clearly, there are lots of ideas, but how do you balance your art, the market, and the time you have for prioritizing projects?
Well, I thank you for repeating that. I think this goes back a little bit to the point that Skate mentioned earlier about the fork in the road between art and doing something for a market. If you're doing RPGs as your full-time job, then you have to walk that line between them a little bit more. I don't have to do that because it's not my primary day gig. So to me, it is about the art and the passion that I have for that particular project. And I'm not going to do something that I'm not insanely passionate about and driven by. So that might make it a little easier for me. I'm not doing it to as a full-time gig. So,
and neither should anybody else.
That's not true. I mean, Jeff's right there in the corner.
I was not talking about him. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't have to weigh some of those questions that I guess some and other people have to do in a different way.
But I think what's great, the point of that though is that you picking what you want to do is one of the joys of not having to rely on market stuff. And I think that's one of being a small publisher is great. And that's what the point you just highlighted, Greg, is that, hey, the reason I'm doing this is to make stuff I think is awesome. If you're making stuff that's for other people, it's not awesome.
And I think that there's a point there too that Greg is right that like of everybody you're looking at up here, 2 of them do this full time. The rest of us all have other jobs and other careers that we pursue. And this is like what we do for fun, sort of. We haven't reached sort of. Yeah, well, sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's not. But
the pain.
Yeah, that sweet pain. but I think that that's what lets you really make that adventure that you're excited about and chase whatever kooky idea you have, because you'll get good ones. You'll get neat ideas that way.
Yeah, and you can't do them all. I've had a million great ideas that I wish I could do. I have a list. I have a million monsters I want to make. I'm the guy in charge of making the Tome of Horrors for Frog God. There's 300 monsters in there. I don't have time to actually put them in. So you have to kiss some great ones that would have been awesome goodbye, just by prioritizing the ones you can get done that you love.
Well, that was a discussion we had the other day too, right? When it was, I think it was like Skeeter and a couple of us were all talking. Like, these are great ideas. You're like, yeah, none of us have time.
Yeah, we can't do this.
Those are super great ideas. Yeah, I'm not doing
No. You got another one, Zach?
Yeah, we do. We actually have let's see here. We have Lloyd talking about me. We're not going to do that one. Early on, we had the review question.
I could reward Lloyd by putting, I don't know if this will, should I change my background?
Yeah, you should reward Lloyd, because I can talk about him a little bit. He's actually quite.
I can jump in on the review comment.
We have more of a comment here actually about.
Zach, shut up. Let Greg talk.
Yeah, please.
Oh, I was just while you're waiting to bring up the next question, the review point that we talked about earlier, I think that one of the things that you need to do is when you have a review, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, is to read the criticism and then ask yourself, is the criticism about you as a person? Is it criticism about the thing that you created? Is it criticism legitimate, or is it a snipe? And I think when you do that, you can let some of the stuff bounce off the armor, and the stuff that you're supposed to let inside to force you to change, you do. So take each one as it comes and just ask yourself, is there any silver lining from this review that I can take and build into what I'm doing to make myself better? And if you have that sort of mindset, if you go cap in hand to the review rather than standing on your soapbox looking down at the review, I think it puts you in a much better place to think about how other people consider your stuff and what can you do to improve.
I think that's true too. I always ask myself too, is did they actually play it
or read it?
So I got dinged on one where they said it was like a swords and wizardry adventure, and it was like first and second level characters, and there was a manticore, but the manticore was in stone and melted, and they said, well, that's way too powerful for a party of level 1 and 2. I'm like, well, you didn't play it, because like all of us playing it, like Jeff is smashing that thing in the face with the hammer as it's melting for 3 rounds, and they get 3 rounds of it. So it's like did they actually play it, or are they just reading it? And I think that's important to consider when you're looking
making
at
assumptions.
One of the questions we had was from a gentleman you guys may know. We call him Spoon.
Oh boy.
What level of outline do you use when writing, designing an adventure? And that's going to be different amongst all of us, but I think we should start with Skullcano.
Can you clarify the question?
What level of outline do you use when you're writing or designing an adventure?
Like, what do you mean when you say level? Do you mean like character level, or are we?
I think he's asking, how do you organize?
To what degree that you outline?
Like, how much specific detail are you putting in that outline?
Got it. I'm probably the least organized in that fashion of anybody in this conference. I was telling.
Have you looked around?
I was telling Skeeter this not too long ago. I actually start with what I call a one sheet, and on that one sheet, I go and go and go with all these different ideas that I have for a certain adventure, and they accumulate on this in no organized fashion. It could be a monster, it could be a magic
I've seen
item.
It.
It could be a plot
I saw
point.
a sheet.
The James Joyce of RPG writing.
I mean, it's a mess. But I'm able to get everything that's in my head, or that I have on 100 different scraps of paper. I get it all on the one sheet, and then I just stare at it and whittle it down and whittle it down and whittle it down. And from there, I get the base plot point of what I want, and then it just grows from there. I wish that I could be like Greg and have the nice book full of organized ideas and beautiful platitudes, all this great stuff. But my mind, unfortunately, is not.
You're born in the wrong country.
Sharp as his. But yeah, that's how I start out, and it just grows. It grows from there.
I think that's something too. As you produce stuff, you get better at and organizing, because
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Like we've gotten, like I used to go from like this sort of stuff. I don't know if it's not gonna be able to see that
Yeah,
because
Here's one right here.
I got a
That's
virtual.
one
Yeah,
sheet. What a disorganized, piece of.
You guys are killing me right now.
Yeah, 3 years ago, you would be lucky if I had more than one encounter in a notebook before I started writing down whatever we were working on. Now, today, with the as technology is driven forward, OneNote has been an amazing invention for us because, all right, where am I at right now? Oh, I'm sitting at the gas station. I've got an idea. Open up OneNote on my phone, type it out real quick, and then later on, when I sit down at my computer, there it is again. I didn't.
And I think that, like for Rocky and I too, we both work on stuff, so we share like one OneNote file, which
When I did that, yeah.
Because we were trying to organize before, and it was like oil and water. Sometimes we were like, "What the? Like, I just deleted this stuff. Where did it?
How do you spell
from?"
caravanserai again?
Yeah. Yeah. We had probably a 6-month fight about the spelling of a word where we'd each go in and change it in the whole document, and then go back the next day and be like, "What the hell? It didn't take the change, so I changed it back."
That's awesome. Jeff, what's your process
Well,
at this point?
Well, I don't really know Greg's process, but assuming Greg that you're an outliner, that you do.
Yes.
Okay, so
He's a professor. Look at him, all suave, sitting back on the couch.
So
yes.
I suppose that my method personally is it sort of starts off as Levi's method, but I sort of backwards walk into an outline from there. So I start off with ideas that could be something that's literally in the middle of my adventure. And then I may be starting to think about, okay, so how did it get to this point? How did we get here? And so then I start to think about the things at the beginning, or I might start at the very end. This is how I want this whole thing to end, or if it's more of a sandboxy type of style, multiple places where it could end, because I don't write adventures that follow a path or a story, and I don't really publish those types of adventures. So because they're so multifaceted and they have so many different means of ingress into the adventure and means of egress out from it, I try to think in those broader strokes. So I guess what I do is I start off with those, I come up with these different ideas like Levi described, and I'm jotting them down on paper, and then I sort of go back to organizing those and forming an outline from there that I will then attempt to follow. But at that point, I'm still only considering my outline to be a guideline. I'm not strictly adhering to it if something doesn't work or something needs to be scrapped or if the whole thing needs to be revised. But I do try to bring order to the chaos at some point.
Yeah.
I think that's like for us, that's what Rocky is saying with OneNote, is like that forces you into an outline.
Yep.
All right, Greg, tell us the correct method to do this.
Yeah.
Scientific method.
Well, I don't know that it's scientific, but it is a method. And I think regardless of what your background is or, the experiences you've had, have a method. And try to, if it's a method that works for you, then stick to it. I'm a very strong believer that good writing comes from good outlines, and crappy writing comes from crappy outlines or the lack of one. Now, some people have the skill to transcend a crappy outline, but a lot of us don't. So if you don't, then you need to organize your ideas, the logical progression of ideas, and that's very easy to do. So if we're going back to the, eat a whale one bite at a time, you've got your chapter, you know what you have to cover in that chapter. So how are you going to arrange it to allow the reader to best draw the information that they need? So if you're, when you write an outline, you can't be doing it writer-centered. You have to be doing it reader-centered. You have to have tender consideration for the reader. And so if you're doing those things already in your outline, in point form before you even start writing sentences. Now you've got your mind right. And now you can go about the process of writing in a way that's reader-centered, has logically flows from one progression to the next. And before you know it, bang, that chapter's done, or that outline's done for that chapter, and away you go. And sometimes, you know, I might have a really good outline for chapter 1 and chapter 2, but only somewhat organized for chapter 3. But as I'm writing 1 and 2, the rest of chapter 3 will suggest itself. So, you know, it doesn't have to be hard and fast with an outline. There's areas where you can massage it a little bit too. And sometimes you want that flexibility when you get a little bit of experience.
I think I'd like to touch on something that you mentioned there too. As far
Only
as
good touching.
as far as you know, that you're designing this for the reader, I think that I would take that even one step further, because not only are you designing this thing for the reader, but you're designing it for the reader in the sense that that reader then has to convey it to another group of people.
Right.
So it's more than just getting the reader to grasp it. It's conveying it in such a way that they can convey it to other people. And it's a big leap.
So when I don't know if you guys do this as well. When I write something, I have my wife read it. And since she's not a gamer, if she understands what I'm going for, it helps me to regulate if I am describing things correctly. Look at all you guys fucking shaking
idea.
your heads.
We're afraid of her.
Yeah, no.
We have a great question to move on to something that's not one we normally get, so I'm kind of interested in everybody's answer here. From I think he goes by Savage Savage BU11.
Savage butt.
Yep, that's right. I like it. And the question is about something that we don't touch on much, but is there anything we can learn from the board game renaissance going on right now? Board games that heavily use RPG elements are setting records. Frosthaven. RPG Kickstarters are nowhere near that level. Can we do better? Do you all start looking at
That's 2 questions.
Sorry.
Jesus, you amateur.
Yep.
Well, I think the board game market is larger than the RPG market.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna get RPG players. Like, we all play board games. I doubt there's a single one of us who wouldn't sit down and play a board game with you, but it's not going to be the other way around. I think the other thing that a lot of board games have going for them is like media tie-ins to some other stuff. You know, so for example, I just backed a wonderful board game. I think Levi did too.
Yeah.
They Live, which I was super excited about. But I think in general, gaming is on the rise. And I think even what we're dealing with right now, gaming is on the rise, and we're going to see more players.
I could speak to this a little bit.
Rocky, you're muted, I think.
Sorry. Yep. I don't think we'd be sitting here right now if gaming weren't on the rise in all facets.
Right.
And what was Matt Colville's Kickstarter last year? Strongholds and Followers.
Yeah.
That was also, that was an RPG product that did like 2 million in
Critical Role.
Well,
and Critical Role. So those RPG products are out there, but people on our level, we don't have the followings that Critical Role or Matt Colville does.
If that's your goal.
We don't have the money to make a board game like that.
No,
right.
No, and speaking about board games have a great overlap with us in a lot of ways. Art's one of the big ones. But to be honest with you, the market is different. How they're sold is different. And we rely heavily on different kinds of tools. But that said, we think about crossover stuff all the time. There's tons to learn. Every board game Kickstarter I read has something interesting, even if it's only the infographics they use or the kind of way they design their actual crowdfunding. That alone is worth learning from. So you can learn a lot from these bigger or smaller Kickstarters for board games that apply to RPGs. I learned stuff from sandwich making kit stuff on Kickstarter that I apply to some of the stuff we do, because there's really neat ideas on how crowdfunding can be written, described, and promoted that comes from a place outside there. And once you're in a rut, and Frog God, we've been there because we've done so many, you just get used to it, becomes routine. You don't want to be routine. And there's lots of fresh stuff happening. So board games are a great place to start, but I encourage everybody to even go even further out to other kinds of Kickstarters completely. So that's rant off.
Well, having a large social media presence is very important. I mean, Levi is out of all of us probably the most social media present active with Planet X all over the place, and I am the least by far. um,
I might have you there.
you might. Well, you're getting better though. There, yeah. Um, but yeah, you that's a key thing. No matter how good your product is, if people don't know about it, they're not going to buy it,
Yeah.
and they're not going to be interested in it. So you have to promote yourself, and I am awful at that.
And I think that that's a lot harder than just saying you need to promote yourself.
Yep.
Yes.
You've gotta run games at conventions. You've got to be present where people gather doing our hobby. If you're not, they have no idea who you are.
Ian, your video froze if you're still on there. Oh, there you go.
He's doing that to you on purpose. Don't believe him.
Okay.
You did it again.
That's going back to the conventions. That's a great place to play test this stuff too.
Yeah.
You're gonna get like at my local gaming store, it's pretty much an echo chamber at this point, right? Like everybody plays generally the same way in an RPG. They will do fairly predictable patterns when they're playing through something. Go to a convention with a bunch of strangers, and you're going to learn a whole lot more than you do.
You have
with your
no
local group.
idea what's going to happen.
Right? You're going to learn a whole lot more than with your local
Holy cow! Yeah,
I think one of the things about the board game renaissance, or the infusion of board games. I mean, it goes along hand in hand with card games, with role-playing games, other tabletop games, and I think one of the reasons for that is we have the option for rich 3D, fully immersive environments, and if those provided us with all the meaning that we needed as human beings, we would just continue to play those games, but they don't. And that's one of the reasons there is a yearning for tactile, face-to-face social gaming. And this is a wave that's been riding for 15 years now. Part of it's generational, but the other part of it is we do live in a hyper-mobile, rootless existence. We do. People do. And they want to be grounded, and they want to be social with their friends and play games. And so it's nice to see the renaissance in board games and card games and RPGs and so on.
Almost like you could teach a class on that.
Almost.
yeah, man, that would be great.
Okay, moving on. This is a good one for a few things. And on this one, I think I'm going to start with Jeff. And the question is, and it comes from an artist, so make sure we're sensitive to his needs. But he's from
Oh
Maine.
Jesus!
Do you start looking at art early or late in the writing process? How much does the incoming art affect the text?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well,
So this is his behind me too. Here,
Yeah, that's Lloyd right there.
That's Lloyd's behind me too. And I think I don't know. What do you think for that, Rocky? Does it? Like we have a pretty good view of what we want, I think, with art. But
I think it's a two-way street. Some of the art that comes in, like this thing behind me here, that's Keelan's art, and that directly affected how we described the Black Hawthorne.
And we're going to talk about Keelan because he's a product of this small publisher talk. So we'll get to that later too.
But the other half of that is our big bad monster at the end of the book. We gave him fairly specific direction on, so it's a two-way street. Sometimes the artist is going to give us something better than we imagined, and sometimes we're going to have to rein them in and make them reimagine what we're seeing instead of what they're seeing. Both ways.
Back up real quick. Is that for new publishers who are starting? When you talk about buying art, like when you say how much is a lot, that doesn't mean much to them, Rocky. When you say you give a lot of direction, how much is that really? Like, is it 3 paragraphs? Is it 4 sentences? Is it a bunch of example pictures? Like, what are you doing to give them?
Generally, when I start, they've got
Depends
Paragraph.
on the artist.
200 words or less. And then I might get a piece of art and then go, okay, here's another 75 words, reinforce these parts, delete these parts, try it again. And
Yeah, and I think at that point, like if it's a decent art, like if it's someone like Lloyd, like he's showing you his product halfway through, and it's a conversation at that point. It's not just like.
And Lloyd pretty much nailed that piece from beginning to end. That behind Ian, but Lloyd made it very professional too. We heard from him every 2 or 3 days on the project. Here's what I'm thinking here. Does like that's another great example. There's a bore in that picture that wasn't in our module until Lloyd needed to do the cover art, and he needed a secondary focus piece, which caused us to add something to the module.
It's also helpful if you have a basic understanding of some art principles, so that when you're speaking to an illustrator, you can talk their language and give them a sense for, what the lighting is, foreground, midground, background, or whatever you got going on. And if you see something, in the what does direct address mean? Is it on the right or left? How much visual space do you want taken up by the monster or whatever it is you're having done? So, the more complex the illustration, the longer the brief. But it's also about having a relationship with the artist. So, like I've worked with a number of people for so long now that I send them the page with the space for the illustration, and I say, "This is what I see here," and they're like, "Okay, yeah, I got it." And then we get to the point where you don't really have too many edits because they're on point with exactly where you're on point. And if you're just starting out and you're like, well, I'm kind of not sure if this artist can do what I want, then just have them do a very rough sketch, very rough. And that'll just give you an idea if things are lining up before they go to to anchor final draft or whatever it might be.
What do you think, Jeff? That's what I was going to say too. And I love Jeff's art. Like Jeff's art in every book pleases me on a visceral level.
How you do that?
Oh, that's nice to hear. So I would say that my situation is very similar to Greg's. I've been working with mostly the same crew of guys for so long now that we're so on the same page. When I see an encounter area that is going to be designated as an illustration, I can sometimes visualize which of my artists that I think that I would like to capture that. But sometimes I'll go off on that and say, you know what, because, okay, so take, for example, Del Tigler and Jonathan Bingham are two of my main workhorses.
Those guys are crazy good.
They do such amazing art, both of them. And their styles are so different. And I don't even know if I've ever shared this with these guys before, but I have had situations where I've said to myself, like, okay, all right, this is definitely an illustration for Jonathan. And then I'll say, you know what? I'm going to give it to Del instead because I want to see what Del would do with it. But to get back to the original question, I think it all depends on what the illustration is for me. Sometimes I will take from the manuscript the encounter area and say, here's the whole encounter, okay? And then I will provide a short bullet point list of what I'm imagining the illustration might be. Sometimes I don't need that encounter area to do that. Sometimes the bullet point list will suffice. If I can get away with simplifying it and keeping it a bullet point list for the artist, I'll try to do that because I'm more of a believer in letting them have that sort of creative license and creating what they are comfortable with.
Absolutely.
To a certain degree, some direction, but I'm also willing to roll with the punches. And what I mean by that is, say you have a guard tower, and on that guard tower that you've directed your illustrator that there are a few guards atop it that are wielding short bows, and they're pointing the short bows at you. So the artist comes back with a beautifully penciled illustration, and the guards up there are holding crossbows. Am I going to tell the guy, you need to erase those crossbows and put in short bows? No, I am not. I'm gonna roll with it and say that's fine. I'll change the encounter. It's easy enough to change the text. So I'll work with them. Now, if he came back and it's not a tower now, and for some reason it's a grassy hill, and I'll be like, well, it's kind of supposed to be part of a, then we might have an
Right.
issue. Those things don't really happen, So I guess what I'm saying is you have to be able to bend a little bit. You can't be so rigid with your artists. You have to be able to sort of roll with the punches and take what they give you. And sometimes, you know what? They will come up with things, you could describe some type of sorcerer who is facing off against undead. And when your artist portrays that sorcerer, all of a sudden he's got this weird hooked looking staff that has some kind of weird ball of energy that's flowing along with it. It'll be like, wow, what the hell is that? You know what? I'm going to make that into a magic item that I'm going to add into this. I'm going to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do stuff like that, and you have to have that sort of flexibility, I think.
And onto that,
because it's collaboration.
Absolutely. I'm gonna add to that just by saying that Lloyd Metcalf taught me the most important thing in the world about art. And I'm gonna tell this to everybody as my secret as a publisher. Never ask for a pile of dead bodies. Because stuff like that's a giant pain in the ass. If you listen to your artists, they will tell you the stuff that's hard to do and will take too much of their time. As professionals, you have to respect their time.
Yeah, Levi.
Times respect is hard. And when you have a vision in your mind and you don't know how to make art, you have no idea. You have no idea it was hard. When I asked him that, I didn't know it was hard. And you know what? Bless his heart. He did the piece anyway and told me afterwards, because he's a really nice person. Don't make me be that jerk. Don't be that guy. Be the guy who heard it first, and then don't ask the artist for that. That's my opinion.
That's so true though, because Levi asked me to do a bunch of mushroom bodies for a map, and I was like, mother, like super annoyed, but I did it.
I want to move on to another question. This one is from somebody we all know and kind of don't like, Mike Ballato, but it's a good question. It's about platforms. About platforms. The question is, what is the opinion on using Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or versus self-publishing your own and selling at cons, etc.? So basically, how do you actually, when you're finished with your product, how do you actually move it? And we can start here. Let's start here with Rocky.
Okay. I think that really depends on what level you're at. Early on, Ian and I, when we first started, our very first module was a Facebook contest that I just distributed through one of the Facebook pages. From there, we went into the drive-through RPG and RPG Now stuff and sold them digitally for a while. And then before we took the step to Kickstarter, we printed our own copies, and we were lucky enough to have friends that had booths at a couple of conventions and sold them through their booths. So I think it's a process that you work up to. When you first publish your first couple of modules, you really want to take the time to get them out there. Make sure if you get 20 people to read it, you're doing good, and you get some reviews from that. And then as you move forward, you'll be able to actually invest a little bit more time and money to get to that print product. And I don't think that you should do a Kickstarter until you've done your 5 or 6 modules, unless you've got a background in publishing somewhere.
I don't think you should do a Kickstarter until your module's about done too. Like,
Right.
it needs everything but that final kiss on it.
Yeah, don't do a Kickstarter when you've got a cool idea. Do a
'Cause
Kickstarter when you've got a product.
Yeah.
Because that can go sideways in a hurry.
The one thing I'll say about Kickstarter to do if you're going to do it, and I'm the outlier here because I'm the guy who did the Kickstarter first I had it written, but all the parts, because Whisper and Venom when I first did it was, yeah, there you go. I had 96 separate components that went into that box. And I won't say my own speech about boxes. Jeff, he's my hero now, so I won't talk about him. But honestly, without Kickstarter, what I wanted to see happen wasn't going to happen. And if I didn't fund, I wouldn't have been stabbed to death. I mean, but basically, there's a fail safe built into it if you're smart about it. If you have promised a good and if you've priced it correctly, you can fund and do things you can't do because of the materials cost of it. And that's really more for the board game market question. But that's there. However, for RPGs, there are so many platforms you can use that you need to take a look at what they are. And if anybody actually wants to know more about Indiegogo, I can talk about it later. Not many of us use it. We do for a very specific purpose, but I'm not going to bore everybody here with that. But we'll be here as long as you want to answer questions. I think we're closing the night down, right?
At 8:30 well shit. In 20 minutes we're supposed to be off, but if we go long, we're
Watch
the,
it.
we're
They
the
pull
last
us off
show.
like the Beatles playing on top of that building, man. We'll be sitting here talking. They'll pull us off the air. No,
Yeah.
seriously, we'll answer the questions. If there's a very specific question about Indiegogo, I'll be happy to answer it then.
And I think that Kickstarter is a nice platform when you're ready to move into that, because it really forces you to budget and to plan out materials costs, and to consider things like taxes, and to consider things like how much is are they gonna take, and how much do you need for your publishers, and how much is shipping, and
Kickstarter,
it forces you to really break it down.
Kickstarter takes a percentage, so don't think all that money that you actually get. So
the other part, some people, you definitely, I would just want to echo what everyone else has said. Starting with a Kickstarter would be pretty hard. Like if you haven't facilitated like a big project like that, and you haven't done the logistics and have the relationships and things that you're going to need to get done, sometimes the weight of everyone's expectations sitting on your shoulders to produce whatever by a certain date as a result of your Kickstarter funding can crush people. They'll break under that weight. So you have to be prepared to literally hold that weight on your shoulders for the length of the term of your Kickstarter and afterwards for follow-up things. And if you're not prepared to do that, and if you can't deal with that kind of pressure, you should avoid Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And I think Kickstarter too, there's that old adage too of like under promise and over deliver. So like pad your timelines, because you don't know if Skeeter's going to lose it and crash a truck into the UPS driver who's delivering your modules and stuff. You just don't know.
It's 100% possible.
Plan for that. It truly is.
Yeah, and what about
I think
stretch
it's also
goals, Ian?
Stretch goals? I have a good stretch goal one, which is don't let them cost you any money. That's
stretch goals that cost you money are bullshit. Just
unless you plan for them way in advance. When I did Whisper, I had the whole thing spread out, knowing the costs where they were coming, and I only got surprised twice by expensive things, which is pretty good considering how many inputs I had. But if you're going to do it, and it's fun, and there's a really valid reason to do that with the right kind of situation, but you know your costs, you know when they show up, and you don't compromise on yourself, because the only one losing is you.
Yep.
And I think I mean
marriage will lose as well.
And I think for us too, it's time costs, right? So that's what we spend on stretch goals is more things to create for you, or player aids to create.
The things you can spend the time on, because time is your most valuable resource, unless you're someone like me, when you do this all day, and it's not always as fun as it sounds like. But if you have a limited amount of time, don't waste your fun free time doing this, making things you don't want to make because you said you would.
And I think that it's
Levi, say something.
Levi.
I actually kind of, as far as the idea of whether or not to start with Kickstarter, I kind of come at that from a different angle. I spent years writing adventures for my friends and for myself, and by the time I got ready to do my first thing, I didn't go through drive-through RPG or sell at cons or any of that stuff. I took the advice of some of my friends that were already in the hobby, and I just wrote it, and I refined it and whittled it down to where I thought it was as good as that it was going to get for me. And then I just put it up on Kickstarter.
Right.
I think that it is like Greg was saying, if you can bear the stress of the Kickstarter, which, I mean, that's if you're going to get into publishing, you should, if you can bear that stress, because it'll take years off your life worrying about all the costs, and am I going to end up living in the parking lot at Taco Bell in my car because I miscalculated shipping costs.
Levi's only 27 too, by the way, guys.
Absolutely.
Just turned.
Yeah.
He looked a lot younger before he ran it. Home, Brad.
But I in that fashion, I disagree with some of the guys. I think that if you have a vision and you have an idea, and you feel confident in executing it, then go for it. Just you go for it. I mean, I've backed things on Kickstarter that they were just cool looking ideas. It didn't look very refined. It wasn't slick. Skeeter and I were talking not too long ago about about that Zine during Zine Quest. That was, I don't remember the name of it, but it did not look polished at all. but the guy was so
Ian knows what it was.
Yeah, I backed the heck out
Oh
of
yeah,
that thing.
no, we totally backed it, and it looked like a train wreck,
We
but it
funded
was
he
it.
was so
so
enthusiastic
great.
about it.
We
Yeah.
funded
So
it.
enthusiastic.
Yeah,
Like a group of us just caused it to be funded because it looked crazy.
yeah, we showed it on an episode of Goddammit, Zach, and because we do a Kickstarter crawl to let people know about it, and there were like 30 of us that backed because of that episode. Because I was watching the number go up, and it funded, and the guy actually posted on the Kickstarter. He was like, "Oh my God, this is going to fund," and he was super excited. And he's had a couple of other. He's run another Kickstarter because of that. So that's not
Well,
the
that's my
greatest
point.
idea, but
I say go for it.
Yeah.
You're either gonna succeed or you're gonna fail. But go for it. If you have an idea and you really want to get it done, you have a project and you're really enthusiastic about it, and everything is genuine, just go for it. Just put it out there and and follow up. Do your work. Make sure everything is tip top. But man, go for it.
Okay, we're going to go out of order on the questions here real quick because I have one that I think is really important that's fairly short. We're going to go around and I'm going to start with Greg after I answer it. Then following that, we have a couple about current times with COVID and with the quarantines and stuff. But the question is, all right, Greg Gillespie, put on your professor hat. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
How should I price my work?
That's a good question. You have to have a sense for the amount of money that you put into the project, the length of the project, and then the market for the project. So you need to. I'm trying to give a realistic way of pricing something as opposed to just throwing a number out. Know those things. How much did it cost you to create it?
right.
What will the market bear? And what are some comparables to what you're about to put out?
Yeah, the comparables is important because you can't compare your book to WotC or Paizo because they have a sense of scope none of us will ever touch.
Their economy of
Combined, we
20
could not touch that.
20,000 books at print run, not a lifetime.
And their price per unit is something that all of us combined couldn't reach.
Not in a million years. And I have a feeling I can guess what it is because I deal with printers overseas, but I don't know for a fact. But it was sick on y'all. So we can't do that. So
our content's better.
It's so valid. We can't use them, and you can't use Frog God
Savage from the Canadian. Wow.
I love it.
Okay.
But I think that this is something that Jeff helped me too is that that so before you should know that was something that we knew before we were kickstarting or doing that. We knew what the price point was, and then we knew because of that
on my spreadsheets, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it helped a lot because it helped me consider all right, so this will let us spend this much on art, or this will let us start to shuffle money around and make sure that we're not going to lose money because that's a very real possibility.
No, that's a great
I think
point.
another thing to expand on what Greg was saying was in my opinion, you have to think about who are you selling this to. So are you intending to put it in distribution? Are you intending to do this as something in which you derive an income in your life?
Jeff,
or are you just looking to break even?
Just in case for people who don't know what that means exactly.
For distribution?
Yeah. What does that mean?
Okay, so say you're selling your product into the gaming distribution means that you're selling it to a third party who then sells it to gaming stores around the country and possibly around the world.
You mean that company that fucked a bunch of companies out of money?
Right. So what you're looking at with them is you're looking at them charging you to list your products in the first place, and then beyond that, looking to get a discount from you that could be upwards of 55% to 60% to 65% off your cover price. So if you take your $20 book and you have to sell it at 65% off, that would be $13 off about. So that means you're selling it to them for $7. Well, how much did it cost you per unit? Did it cost you
Cost us
$8?
$6.50.
So if you are selling it to $7 to them, did it cost you $5 per unit? Are you willing to make $2 per book?
If you have to be willing to
Matter
make
to you?
10%.
Does that matter to you? Are you trying to really establish? Are we talking about? I guess the big thing with me is as part of it. It's not, the question isn't as simple as it is. The question's only 5 words long, but it's a question of are you not only trying to create gaming materials, are you also trying to start a small business?
This
So
goes back
that-
to my original point. Is this an art project or is this something you want to make money off of?
Right.
And I think distribution should never be your very first thought when you're making anything, unless you're making board games.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just say it's selling direct to the consumer. Okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want to double your money? Did that $20 book cost you $10 to make each? When you divide up your printing costs, your art costs, your layout costs, your editing costs, your cartography costs, and everything in between. So when you did all the math, did you come up with $10? And so then you look at it and you say, well, I want to double my money. I'm going to spend $5,000 on this book. So over the course of who knows how many months and years of selling it, do I want to get, twice that much back? So that's up to you and what your philosophy is beyond just the gaming point, but like Skeeter mentioned, the 2 different sides of that path,
Yeah. If
Another question just to jump in there is how many hours of gaming as a ballpark is someone going to get from the thing that you're producing? And then what's a reasonable cost per hour given all the other considerations that we've talked about? So, and then you can get into other things that are free to play, and then where is that putting you relative to free to play stuff? So, it's a simple question to throw out, but there is no real simple answer. It's a number of variables you have to consider and be informed. Go around to drive through and other places, look at costs for various things, and
ask me on Facebook. I mean, seriously, this is a really complicated question. Greg is 100% right. Ask us. If this is the kind of thing you want to know somebody to ask a question that we can share, because there are costs you might not know. We don't want anybody to go broke. We just want to see good games.
Yeah, definitely talk to the other guys. I'm not good on the business end of things.
Well,
and don't forget what Skeeter made a little joke about earlier. Don't forget that Kickstarter takes, they take their cut,
They take their
and if you
piece.
use backer kit as well. So if
That
you take
takes another
Kickstarter
piece.
takes their cut,
Never
backer
get
kit
lost.
takes their cut, credit card processing takes their cut,
Tax.
Yeah.
So
If you don't have a spreadsheet, you're not ready to price your product yet. You have to know your costs. You have to know the costs you don't know about, and you got to ask somebody those things.
and sometimes surprises happen. Sometimes your project has delays, right? And so you got your quote from your printer, and you think you're all set, but your artists had a couple of your artists had some issues with their personal lives or jobs or whatever, and it's forcing them to be 2 or 3 months later. So you put your project a little bit on hold. Well, it comes time you're ready to launch your project and you're ready to go with things, and suddenly you talk to your printer again, and your printer has now raised the price by $500 because of X, Y, and Z that you weren't anticipating. And so now you're looking at it and say, well, what do I do now? Do I charge more per unit? Do I suck it up? What do I want to do?
When your Kickstarter ends, but you're going to ship in January and the shipping costs changed, surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Overseas costs. Yeah, ship something to Australia. Man, that's shipping something to Greg. I mean, I live north of Seattle. I am literally 60 miles from the border to Canada.
You could almost frisbee it to him.
I could throw it to Canada, but it costs $25 minimum.
It's outrageous, yeah.
Yeah,
I think a good point about
print on
international-
demand too. Yeah, is making that easier.
That's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, just to add in there, if anybody is on the Canadian side of the border and they're thinking about this question, it is something, because if you're in Canada, most of your costs are going to be in US dollars, And, you know, I think we're losing about 33 cents to the American dollar right now. So shipping can factor in, the price of your products vis-a-vis what you're losing on exchange can also factor in. It's a different set of challenges. If anybody's in that position, just reach out to me. I can try to help.
Okay, Zach, do you have any more questions? We're
Yeah, we
going to
have a
do
couple.
one last question, and then we're going to go around the cubicle here.
Okay. And to be honest, I'm happy to answer questions afterwards if you want to share a Zoom link or something, so people know that we don't have to end it.
I don't know how to do that.
Just saying. But anyway, these are two related ones, and they're related to what's currently going on with the COVID-19. And first one is, how has COVID-19 impacted the day-to-day activities of those of us on the panel? And is there a backlog of ideas coming down the pipe that will just show up because of it? Is there much downtime for the gaming and creation? And the second one is related to the COVID small business loans, and if anybody's taken an opinion on that. I don't think anybody here probably wants to share it publicly like this, but we can talk after if everyone wants to.
Yeah, I didn't get that loan, and I tried.
I'll talk about this after, but there's a lot.
I did not opt for it either.
Okay, so the first part though, how has COVID-19 affected you? Let's start with, I don't know, Levi.
Well, I got furloughed from my day job, but with pay. My wife's kind of on the front lines of things. She's a nurse. So I've been, here with our 3-year-old.
Hold on. Time out. Before you just let that one go, tell everybody what your wife does.
Oh, she's in the Air Force. She is a combat medic, but here she's not at war, so she's at the hospital, and she's got the mask and the
that's still a big deal.
Right there on the front lines. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, she's tough. But with her at work and me at home, I've honestly been getting a lot of writing done. So on that small part, it's good that I'm getting all the writing done, but it's not good what's going on. It just happens to be the byproduct of what's happening. It's been I've been able to produce a lot of things and sharpen things, and I've got a Kickstarter coming up, so I've been going hard at that. So it's the extra time is nice, but again, it is what it is. Does that answer the question?
Oh, yeah. Anybody else have anything to say about how it's affected them at all?
Yeah,
I can talk to it.
Yeah. Rocky.
I've got 3 small kids at home now. Well, not small anymore, but 10, 7, and 6. So free time is no longer a thing. Like, I'm with one of the boys 24/7. So I'm not getting much done. I started running Greg's Barrel Maze game as a way to release some steam for myself and anybody else that likes playing it, likes playing D&D.
We have had a lot of fun.
Me.
Yes.
A what?
Mommy rotted me. Thanks.
Oh yeah,
a lot,
I
Greg.
totally mommy rotted you.
Yeah.
Huzzah.
Yep.
But otherwise, like it's school with the kids. It's making sure that they get their chores done, doing the dishes, cleaning the house, spending some time outside as we can. So free time is not a thing for me right now.
Yeah, and I think I'm in the same boat as Rocky. So like I'm working remotely now, but so my 40 hours suddenly turned into 55 to be able to deliver the same services I was delivering before. So it's tough. But I think definitely for myself, I started writing something on my own just to sort of let my stress out, which is, I've probably done, 4,000, 5,000 words, just taking a break in the middle of my day for 15 minutes just to put out some words and get rid of some of my stress and feel a little better. But yeah, and it's I think it slowed projects for all of us. All of us were Rocky and I were pretty close for a Kickstarter to get kicking. And I imagine if this hadn't happened, we'd be running that right now.
Yeah. About wrapping it up, probably.
Yeah.
I'm working full time. I'm working full time on my next project right now. So, this is the time of year. Our academic term ends about the first week of April, and followed by an exam period. So this is a normal downtime for me right now when I do have a chance to get to writing rather than lecturing.
Jeff,
Peter?
I'll let Jeff go.
Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, so I would say in our case for Northwind Adventures that there is a backlog of ideas coming through. So I guess what I mean by that is several writing projects that continue to make a lot of progress, more progress than what we would normally have in normal conditions. In the sense that all these projects will be closer to completion by the time we run Kickstarters for them. So I guess what I'm also saying is that we've pumped the brakes on running a Kickstarter for now. It has impacted how things work, because what should have been our next project was a dice project that was going to be custom dice for our game, and that was put on hold. But that just allowed us to go deeper into some of the writing projects, which is 2 short form modules and 2 longer form modules. And so just tackling each of those, but just like everyone else. So I'm home. I do a lot of the creative content editing for the Hyperborea adventures, that the ones that I don't write, obviously. And so doing that at home, my wife is a nurse as well. So she's, been working long hours, and she's at the front lines of all this stuff as well. And so I'm home and the kids are home, but my kids are a little older, so they're a little more autonomous, but still there seems to be, something that needs my attention, that small or big throughout the day, that's just a distraction. So, you have to tolerate it during these difficult times and just try to find those half-hour or 40-minute windows.
Yes.
You make your cup of coffee, you get yourself in your little sanctuary, and you type away at something for a little while you have that moment of time. I like getting up really early in the morning. I can't say that I enjoy it, but I do get up early in the morning because it's quiet in the house. There's no activity. There's no one, or there's nothing besides maybe the dog that needs my attention. So it allows me that freedom to get some progress done on something on the project.
Well said. Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are supposed to close down, but there is nobody after us. So if we have another question, Zach, you want to get through, if people want to hang out with us.
I'm just going to say the COVID-19 stuff, I don't have any kids. My life has changed absolutely not at all in any way. So all of you who are doing this while everything else is going on, you're heroes in my eyes. All of you who actually have real jobs and are doing things in the front line, thank you so much. I get to make games, and that's wonderful, and I love it. But right now, you guys are the important people, and it matters a lot. So thanks to everybody who's everything from you're helping to teach people remotely to making sure that people are bagging groceries. You're all heroes. I'm just lucky to be where I am. So I want to thank everybody. So yeah, we have a couple other ones real short. I was going to talk about Indiegogo a bit. I want to talk technology just real quick. Someone had asked something about as it went by. What technology? You mentioned OneNote, Rocky and Ian. Anybody else use something that you think you can't live without? That's a really good piece of advice.
The Adobe Suite.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably our biggest continuous expense, other than like art. That's the one that's manageable. And
we really use 3 things. We use OneNote, Adobe Suite, and Word. OneNote gets all of our ideas into place. Word turns them into a document, and then Adobe turns them into a product.
And you don't necessarily have to be the guy doing the layout to understand why you want to have a copy of InDesign. Now, I'm not advocating for anybody to say, because I did this, Lloyd mentioned it earlier in the stream. I was the guy who bought Adobe and then decided to lay out Whisper and Venom in 4 weeks, and I did. Don't do that.
I'm not doing
that. I have the ability to actually look at some of the production documents that you own when you get them. It's very helpful to have. And so that's an expense people don't ever think about, but I can't give my account up just when I need it. Plus, I know Levi can talk to about, what do you use for video, Levi?
So I don't do my own videos. Those are done by a friend of mine.
This is the way.
By my friend, by my friend Nate. He's been with me since day one. He does a lot of stuff for Zombie Go Boom, and if you've ever heard of that, they've got like a gazillion subscribers on YouTube. But he does a lot of video editing for them. He's been doing the videos for me again since day one. He gives me a very reasonable rate because we're very old friends, and I think he feels a great deal of pity for me. So, I'm lucky on that front that he does that. A quick question I have for you guys though is, what do you use to track your project management? Because we were talking about the technology. Are there any apps you use? Are there any programs you use to track from beginning to end how you keep track of everything that goes into what you do?
I use Excel. And I basically use, I set up multiple tabs in it, and my different tabs tell me who I talk to and when. So say I have a list of 11 artists who are working on a project. I'll have each of their names, and I'll have each of the art pieces that they're working on. And I keep track of who I talk to when. So if I say, some artists are quieter than others, and they just like show up with the work at some point. Other artists share with you regularly their progress from conceptual sketches to more defined pencils to finished pencils and inks and everything else. So, but others are less communicative. So I try to keep track of the last date that I spoke with each of them. And I also keep track of dates of when I spoke to a printer for a quote. I'll keep track of where, so I keep track of each of the specifics of a project and and the date that I last took on that particular part.
I let email do that.
I use a
buried though.
And then I just search for the person's name or the subject matter or whatever's the subject bar, and that'll bring up who I talked to, when, what the brief was, what the response was, quotes, stuff like that.
There's a button called Insight in Microsoft Outlook that will do that for you. Every single time someone emails you, hit a button and lists everything they ever said to you. Those kinds of things matter. But to be honest, I don't have a good answer for this for small publishing, because this is where my job is 1,000% different than almost everybody else here, in the fact that I have 45 open projects that are being worked on now. So we use a much more significant infrastructure for that. So, but the email search function that Greg says is no lie. I'm backing him up 100%.
So, and I think like for Rocky and I, who outline in OneNote, like we have several tabs in OneNote that are just regarding organization, art needed, who's doing the art, if we received it. If it's received, it's then put, like a copy of it is put in there so you can quickly glance at it. It's all organized right there, so we can quickly go through, and Rocky can look and see if I've done all the maps that we need, or if we've gotten the art and one of us got it. Because for us too, we have to, usually we kind of do this staring match to see who's going to actually end up contacting an artist, kind of thing.
I do that with Matt Finch.
Yeah, so which it ends up like so we're like, so did you contact? He's like, no, did you? We're like, we kind of wait, but it lets us keep track of that stuff and know where we are with it and what we still need.
And as we move through, they go into the comment section in the Word document too. So we need, Ian, finish this art is highlighted text somewhere in the document, usually something like that.
There was a question, and this comes playing right after you, Rocky, so I'm going to run this one right back to you. From Mark, Mark from Creative Mountain Games. He's the first guy I remember at McGarty. Anyway, the Office 365, do we use it? Frog God, yes, we use it extensively. We have about 36 people who are members of our actual Frog God server. But Rocky can tell you right now that just because you have a bunch of collaboration tools, it gets very, very hard to have a very large document, everybody sharing it. So there's a lot of different angles on how to approach these things. And some things you learn as you go. but we do use that tool very extensively. For project management, we have an actual outside Gantt software we use for project management. So
And I
hope
think
that
it's
answers your question, Mark.
and Mark, even if you are using, and this is InDesign too, back up your files to a hard drive if they are stored. So Rocky and I working on something, our current thing is often stored in the cloud. So someone else's server somewhere else, shit can happen to that. And it can disappear and it can suddenly update and you're like, where the hell did all my stuff go?
Yeah.
Greg felt some of this from us too. And Rocky
Yeah.
did some layout for him. Is like suddenly shit updated and we're like, where the F did all these files go?
Unfortunately,
It
was backed up on my computer. That would happen to be in the shop at the time. But generally, there's a backup on Ian's computer and a backup on my computer. So we have 2 backups for everything online.
That's smart.
That's a great idea.
Good.
Okay, so we are 10 minutes over. Let's do an around the Brady Bunch circle with the last. If you could give somebody one bit of advice that is starting out, what would that be? Ian.
I'd say reach out. So if you got ideas, if you got something you want to pursue, all of us are like, you can chat with us. Like we're pretty open. There's none of us is hiding any arcane secrets or knowledge. We're happy to share with you what we've learned. And I think it makes a difference. You just got to be willing to reach out and put in a lot of sweat.
Rocky.
Absolutely.
Realize that there's a difference between a passion project and a project for money. Especially look at stock art. Stock art's really big when you're first starting out. Those 2 things in particular. Realize what your project is for and realize that art is going to probably make or break it, cost-wise and production-wise, both.
Jefe.
I would say, is that me?
That's you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would say,
New kid.
don't be intimidated by the blank page. So one of the tricks that I've employed over the years when I'm struggling with the project is I like to write about what I want to write about. So instead of just writing the adventure itself, whether it's the setup or the encounters or whatever, I will sort of journal about what I want to do. That way, when I get to the actual writing, it will flow a lot more easily. So I think it's helpful it's almost like a brainstorming session with yourself. And it helps you like when you first start to sort of establish that necessary rhythm to get it going.
Nice. Levi.
You said something to me last year at North Texas that it's just stuck with me the entire time. And that was that we're all different versions of the same guy. I don't know if you remember telling me that or not, but it's true. Everybody that I've met in this hobby, we're all into the same stuff, really. I mean, it all kind of comes back to the same, sources, more or less. So like Ian was saying, don't be afraid to reach out. Matt Finch saved me so much money with 1 5-second piece of advice.
He's a bad person, though.
Casey Christopherson has been an excellent mentor to me. Skeeter, Zach, everybody that I've reached out to, any of you guys, the Frogs and other companies too, but especially the Frogs. You guys have all been extremely generous with your time and very forthcoming with advice. So again, just reach out. Ask people questions. If you don't know the answer to something, don't wing it. Don't take that risk. You could, like I said, you could end up living in your car in a Taco Bell parking lot. You just ask these questions and make those relationships, and you'll build friendships out of those relationships.
Greg.
Probably the piece of advice I'd give people if they're just starting out is to embrace creative self-doubt. It's okay to have misgivings about what you're writing. It's okay to question the quality of what you're doing. In fact, those are very healthy things to do. So all of us have been in the situation where we're just wringing our hands over something that we've written or an encounter that we want to go or to frame in a certain way. And then you just throw your hands up and you say, well, this is just dreadful. But don't get discouraged. Give it a day, come back to it. You might come back to it with a fresh mindset, a new outlook, or maybe a little bit of peer feedback. And then before you know it, you'll be back on the tracks, rolling on to the next page. So embrace creative self-doubt. It's part of the process. And whether you're painting a miniature or you're writing an adventure or playing a piece of music, I mean, we're not robots. It's a process. It takes time, and engage in that process and stick to your guns, and you'll produce what you want to produce eventually.
Zach?
Don't do box sets. And if you insist on doing a box set, contact Zach. This is the way.
Oh boy. Okay, so I'm not going to tell everybody that they're going to be able to do this. Some people that try to write an RPG module are not going to be able to do it. They're going to fail. But you don't know how it's going to go unless you try. And if you're going to try, ask questions. We're available. You have people in your group that are available. You got to get over your fear of being embarrassed by failure and just try. Just ask. And you'd be surprised. All of us didn't think we were going to make it 100% of the time, and we've made it somewhere. So
I thought yours was going to be don't do an art book.
No, I strongly believe in doing an art book, even if it costs you all of your profits. And I think Greg Gillespie can back me up on that as well.
That is the way. Listen to those guys.
Okay.
To be fair, it's a nice art book.
They are nice art books. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope some of this was at least palatable. Thank you to KoboldCon for letting us do this. Thank you to everybody on the panel. Thank you to the fans. Ask us a question at a convention, but don't tell us about your characters.
You can tell me I'm good. Zach Glizzer on Facebook, please. That's where I get the most traffic. You have questions you can ask me, and I think all these guys feel the same way. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.